Can you imagine a world where people forced to leave their homes by the climate crisis are welcomed? Not by razor wire, or by border walls, or by the choking of tear gas or the barking of dogs, but by love. By open arms, waiting to give the right healthcare needed after what might have been a treacherous journey. The education that can restore a future full of possibilities. And the opportunity to build new homes, lives, and identities. Whether they stay a week, a month, or a lifetime. Can you see it? Sounds like the kind of future we can be proud of, doesn't it? The only question is, how do we get there? Firstly, I think we need to understand the problem. You see, people have always been moving around the world, be it due to conflict, economic reasons like looking for a job, or cultural reasons like falling in love. But as a result of the climate crisis, more and more people are being forced to leave their homes, communities, and countries. For some, the decision to leave is made for them. Like when in a few hours a hurricane blows away their home, a wildfire devastates their community, or flooding destroys their crops. But for others, the decision to leave comes after years and years of struggling to get by, while a slow motion disaster makes their day-to-day harder. Like a drought making fetching water harder, rising sea level makes staying dry harder, or rising temperatures make staying cool harder. But for some, leaving is not an option. This could be because they have nowhere else to go, no way and no money to get there, or a disability that leaves them stranded. As a result, they become trapped in terrible conditions they can neither escape or endure. And yet, to others still, leaving everything they've ever known behind is too painful, too much like giving up. I mean, no one actually wants to be forced to leave their homes, and they will try everything in their power to stay. But forcing people to move is exactly what the climate crisis is doing. For those who move, everyone's journey is different. For some, their destination is nearby. The shelter of family and friends, a temporary settlement, or a city not far away. And for some, their journey will take them across borders, across lines of control, barbed wire fences, and contested frontiers. And with each journey comes different challenges shaped by geography, politics, and economy. Yet when moving, many people will experience poor living conditions, a lack of opportunity, and a massive uphill struggle when trying to start again. But for a few, their journeys may be truly terrifying. Deadly journeys, marked by treacherous crossing over crashing seas, raging rivers, and scorching deserts. Torturous journeys which see years gone, enduring dehumanizing asylum processes, and sickening journeys which end in hostile xenophobic receptions, which can also lead to persecution, prosecution, and expulsion. And you know what? Those that do cross borders find themselves in a legal void. Because although you and I might refer to a person displaced by climate crises as a climate refugee, according to international law, there is no such thing. Which means that a person who has crossed a border due to the climate crisis doesn't qualify for protection and cannot seek asylum due to climate change. To be fair, maybe it's because the Refugee Convention was established in 1951 that it only offers protection to those fleeing conflict or facing political, social, racial, or religious persecution. But wasn't that 72 years ago? And hasn't a lot changed? Don't we now know that from just 1.1 degrees of heating, people are moving due to the climate crisis? Don't we now have the science, the data, the crystal clear examples like the devastating floods in Pakistan in which 8 million people were displaced. Isn't it clear that people are being forced to move and they need more support? And you know what? I'm starting to think that it's more than just an issue of legal recognition. You remember the border walls, the razor wires, the barking of dogs and the choking of tear gas? Well, something makes me think that some countries don't want people moving, don't want people asking for help, and don't want to answer for their historical responsibilities for the climate crisis. And that is a huge problem. It's a massive problem because as the world warms up, people are going to need to be moving. Moving to keep their heads above water, moving to access the support they need, and moving to find the strength to begin again. So, how do we right this massive climate injustice? Well, I've been thinking and I've got some ideas. What if we gave people the rights and services that they need when a climate disaster displaces them in their own country? Wouldn't that help them stay? And for those who have no choice but to cross borders, shouldn't we be creating safe, legal pathways for people to move instead of blocking them with walls and putting them in detention centres? Asylum processes which take just hours and not months or years to be approved. Wouldn't that mean that they don't have to rely on people smugglers? What about if we finally had a real conversation about international legal recognition for climate refugees? One where we didn't hide behind the political, our national interest or the growth of our economies. Where solutions could be found by upholding and sometimes updating international human rights laws. And you know what? We can create new regional and national laws that recognize and protect people crossing borders because of the climate crisis. And don't you think it's time to get the new loss and damage fund filled? Because shouldn't rich countries, companies and individuals most responsible for the climate crisis be paying their fair share? Paying up for loss and damage so that communities on the front lines can recover and rebuild. And wouldn't that also help them stay? And you know, there is something I think is equally as important. And it isn't to do with money, law, or policies. What about changing our minds? What about not being so quick to judge, quick to anger, or quick to assume? I mean, what if those of us who live in rich countries, instead of herding children into detention centres, placing crying men on planes, or sending families away to prison islands, started to recognise our historic responsibility, recognise our obligation, and recognise our privilege? Because don't we have a responsibility to love, to care, to welcome those forced to leave their home from a climate crisis they did little or nothing to cause? What do you think? Is this future out of reach? Or can we dig a little deeper and find a way to love, care for and welcome those having to leave their homes due to the climate crisis? Don't you think that's something we could be proud of?